So how do we do that? How do we allow for a constructive conversation on these notions of heritage into the future? There's a cyclical process which is based on the notion of data gathering. And the idea of this UNESCO World Heritage and Schools of Architecture Research Network is really centered around this idea of data gathering and knowledge sharing. So the idea is we gather data from UNESCO sites, urban sites in particular. Then that data allows for an analysis and study, which in turn allows for discussion and production, which in turn feeds back into that data gathering. Now, I'll illustrate how we've done that in the last few years with Edinburgh University, Bordeaux School of Architecture, ARCHIP in Prague, and Paris La Villette. This happens through effectively 4 tools. The first one is visits, second one is exhibitions, third is conferences, and the fourth is workshops. So here are events and collaborations that have happened over the last 4 years, since 2013 in Edinburgh. I'm going to describe you four events that have happened. The foundational one in Edinburgh in 2013. Then Bordeaux School of Architecture coming to Edinburgh in 2016, February. The reverse, Edinburgh University going to Bordeaux School of Architecture in November of that same year, 2016. And then Bordeaux having an exhibition in 2016, 2017. And then all these schools, Bordeaux and Edinburgh and Paris La Villette went to Prague this year, in May, June this year, to all have a workshop together. So this is a timeline of what's happened. So we have, E is exhibition, C is conference, V is visit, and W is workshop. So through these different events, really, we've had different interactions. In Edinburgh, the first event in 2013, there were 4 days of exhibition and 2 days of conference. What this first event allows us to see is the exhibition was, the brief of the exhibition is really at the heart of this World Heritage Network. The brief of the exhibition was, show us, talking to architects and conservation architects, contemporary architects, show us buildings or designs or interventions that have happened within the UNESCO site since inscription, since 1995 for Edinburgh. So Ruxandra Stoica and myself, Ruxandra Stoica from the University of Edinburgh and myself contacted approximately 25 architects, and we asked for 1 or 2 projects that actually had been built or designed within the UNESCO site since 1995. So in parallel with that, we had a conference where Jukka Jankeletto from ICOMOS, so he's, let's say, one of the key figures in ICOMOS and UNESCO World Heritage Theory, really, from early 90s through to today. So Jukka Jankeletto was the keynote speaker for this event. And he was a wonderful person, really, to have for his practical as well as theoretical input. So let's go back to the next slide. Oops. So the exhibition, as I described, one room had approximately 30 boards. So 20 boards were architects who were presenting a project or 2 projects designed or built within the UNESCO site of Edinburgh since 1995. And then we had a few boards by students. So at the time, Suzanne Ewing's unit of contemporary intervention had showed some projects as well, some theoretical projects. So there was a balance of actual real projects by architects, real inverted commas, and academic or conceptual projects by students. And also we had the conservation department from Edinburgh University providing full-size or half-size models, which were also illustrative of the work that's being done within the UNESCO site. For this, we proposed a format for the presentation board. So each each architect or each person contributing has to follow this one format, which was really quite straightforward. It was show the Edinburgh World Heritage Site map, top left, show the project location with a little dot, and then show the project details, content, that's, well, the content itself, the frame, and then the practice name or the student name in the bottom right. So of those, these are 30 of the boards that we had, so from architects and students. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. So when I was talking about data gathering, really this is the fundamental point, I think, at which we begin to feed into a broader debate. We produce these boards, and these boards then feed back into a debate, which in turn can produce. And so there was a range of contributions, really, from conservation architects and contemporary architects. So as we'll see, Edinburgh World Heritage Trust, also, who are in charge of stewarding the World Heritage Site, produced this board as well, which reflected a few of the projects that they were involved in. Then we had conservation architects explaining interventions on stone repair. Conservation architects, well, Simpson and Brown, who are conservation and contemporary, gave us one conservation project of restoration of a courtyard, and then a contemporary project of a small chapel. And then contemporary projects such as this one. So I think there was a nice balance of conservation and contemporary. And this begins really to, when we see those maps at the top right, or top left, sorry, we can start to see the dots populating, mapping the evolution of the World Heritage Site. And finally, this is a project, an urban project, in the Cannon Gate, at the bottom of the Royal Mile, which also showed a contemporary intervention. So on the basis of this, I came to Bordeaux for the first time in 2015, and I met with Thierry Jean-Monod and Chantal Calais, and described to them the work that we did in Edinburgh, that we had done. And so from that, the idea came to have this exchange between Bordeaux and Edinburgh, and for Bordeaux to have an exhibition similar to what we had done in Edinburgh. I think it's important to highlight that Thierry and Chantal had been doing a lot of this work themselves in parallel, really. So what this manifested to me was that we didn't, I didn't invent anything. The only thing that happened was we made links, I think. And so we managed to crystallize, to bring together various expertises from both Bordeaux and Edinburgh. When Bordeaux went to Edinburgh, there were 2 days of visits of the UNESCO site of Edinburgh, 2 days of conferences and talks about the site itself, 1 day of workshop, now a design charrette over 1 day, and then 2 days of exhibition. So I think this is a good example this time of an event that had all of the aspects that I talked about, all the tools that I talked about. So this is the timetable from 17th of February to 19th of February. So we had site visits of all within the UNESCO site. So site visits of contemporary interventions. Calvin Duncan, who's a young architect in Edinburgh, showing one of his buildings with Malcolm Fraser. And then some historic monuments there at the bottom from the Cannon Gate, or from the High Street. And then we had a conference which involved a contemporary architect, John McElgan from Rogers, and Gillian Harrop, who's a conservation architect. So we tried to balance this in terms of having speakers from different backgrounds, showing different types of projects. So in this case, John spoke about the British Museum project of the practice, and Gillian talked about the Noise Museum project in Berlin. So next one. So this was the design charrette. This is what we did with the students from Bordeaux and Edinburgh. So there was 1 day of working, which was quite an intense day. I'm sure Thierry and Chantal will agree. Quite a full day, a dynamic day with Cassandra and other members of the architecture department from Edinburgh University. And here are a few snapshots of the day itself. And then designs were produced, really within, I would say, 7 hours. It was a very dynamic and quick process. Interventions were produced in the Old Town, as you can see above, and the New Town down the bottom. The idea was we mixed schools, so we had for each school, sorry, let's go back up. The ones in pink were from Edinburgh University, and the ones in blue were from Bordeaux. So we had, in each team, we had half really, students from Bordeaux and Edinburgh. And then we had teachers and tutors mixed across the teams. And then there was an exhibition at the end of it, which again, yeah, lasted about over the weekend. So coming back to this notion of data gathering, how do we capture this? What happens next? And so I developed a website called newarchitectures.com, which is really where this information has started to be disseminated. So we're using this as a knowledge repository. The University of Edinburgh created for the 2013 event a mirror site where similar information was stored. And so, of course, in such situations, the question is always, where is the data stored? And that is a question which, of course, still remains open. In this case, in the launch of this initiative and the work we've done so far on this network, this is the primary knowledge repository where we have links to the exhibition boards, so these are fully accessible, publicly accessible, and also links to the talks themselves. So Yuka Yokoleto's talk, for example, is accessible on the site via YouTube. So who? So as I said, we had 4 schools involved of late, but these 4 schools really, for me, are the real beginning of something that can be something much, I think, bigger and more constructive, even more constructive than what we've done so far, and more forward-looking in terms of knowledge sharing internationally across Europe and eventually beyond Europe as well.